What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Gary Antonio Russell versus Emmanuel Rodriguez 2, and this is going to be a 12-rounder in the bantamweight division, and this fight is going to be Saturday, October 15th, from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, and this fight is going to be broadcasted on Fox pay-per-view. And again, both fighters' resumes: Gary Antonio Russell, fighting out of the United States, holds a record of 19 wins with no defeats and 12 wins coming by way of knockout. He's currently ranked number 6 by BoxRec in the bantamweight division. He's also part of the Russell fighting family, obviously, with his brothers Gary Antoine Russell and Gary Allen Russell Jr. Obviously, Gary Allen is a former world champion. Gary Antoine is rising up in the ranks currently and is now up in there in the top 10 at 140. And Gary Antonio Russell here is obviously moving up each fight, facing better opposition, and this is obviously another big, tough test. But to get into his resume, some of his best wins include a technical decision win over Juan Carlos Payano, a majority decision victory over Alexandre Santiago in his last fight, and obviously he does have that no contest on his resume when he fought Emmanuel Rodriguez in their first fight. And I mean, it even pains me to say that they even had a first fight, because that first fight was brutal in a sense that, one, it lasted less than 20 seconds, and two, that there was a massive headbutt in the first 15 seconds that led to a big gash on, I believe it was like the forehead area, around there, like in between his eyebrows, maybe just above Rodriguez, in the center of his eyebrows. Like, there was a big gash there from the headbutt. And I think that Russell also swelled up a bit there too, from what I remember. But I mean, yeah, that was just such an odd way to end the fight. And the fight, I mean, it wasn't even really a fight. It was like 20 seconds. So, I mean, yeah, now they're getting it on. But to get into Rodriguez's resume, he is fighting out of Puerto Rico. He holds a record of 20 wins with 2 defeats and 13 wins coming by way of knockout. He is currently ranked number 5 by BoxRec in the bantamweight division, so BoxRec only has them separated by 1 spot. So the winner of this fight by BoxRec should definitely break through easily in that top 5. And he's also a former IBF bantamweight world champion. And to list both of his defeats, he had a brutal and destructive knockout loss to Naoya Inoue, and he had a very, very controversial split decision loss to Raymar Gaballo. And I thought that was a fight that Rodriguez won pretty clearly, and I thought that the judges definitely got that one wrong. But to list some of his best victories, he's defeated Paul Butler by unanimous decision, Jason Maloney by split decision, in a fight that really could have went either way, and he's coming off a first-round knockout win over Roberto Sanchez Ganta. And Roberto Sanchez Ganta wasn't really a big fighter. He just got the job done, and it was really a stay-busy fight for Rodriguez. But like I said earlier, Rodriguez also obviously has that no contest in the first fight with Gary Antonio Russell. So in my opinion, this fight, I think, will be a very tough fight for Gary Antonio Russell. I mean, as you could see on paper, or as you just heard on paper, actually, Rodriguez has a very solid resume. He's a former world champion. He's top 5 by BoxRec. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be a tough fight. I mean, obviously, I can't go off of anything in their first fight because nothing really happened at all. So it's just basically like I'm just predicting the fight, just in general all over again. So I don't think I did a prediction video for the first fight. Luckily I didn't, because nothing really happened with it and it wouldn't have really went anywhere, because obviously of how it ended. But yeah, here, I mean, I'm hoping that nothing crazy happens like the first fight, where we get a no contest again. But I mean, Gary Antonio Russell is coming off a very tough fight against Alexandre Santiago. That's something to take in going into this fight. I mean, that fight could have went either way. Either man definitely could have won that one, and it was a very, very close fight. But Santiago is a very, very tough and rugged brawler who's drew with many fighters that are very solid, who has losses to very solid fighters. So yeah, Santiago is a very tough guy in his own right, but I mean, the thing is, Emmanuel Rodriguez has a completely different style. Rodriguez is very technical. He could box, he could counter. He normally fights at mid-range, trying to land and outwork his opponents with just like counter shots and just better work. It's not like he's a come forward pressure fighter or anything like that. He's just a very sort of technical guy at mid-range and a bit on the outside. It's not like he's like a pure boxer where he's just dancing around the ring, sticking out that jab. I mean, he's just a good boxer puncher at sort of a decent range. But as for Gary Antonio Russell, the same can be said for him. I mean, he likes to fight with very quick hands, quick feet as well. His footwork is very solid. He could box as well. They both have very sort of similar styles. Like, they're not pure boxers where they're dancing around the ring, but they're fighters who could land a decent counterpunch, who could come forward at some moments. I mean, overall, both of these guys are very balanced fighters, and I think this will be a very solid chess match while it lasts. I don't think it will be necessarily the most exciting of fights, but it will be a very good fight for the true boxing fans to watch who like seeing the real sweet science in the ring. I mean, both of these guys are very technical, great top 10 fighters, so I think this will be a very, very solid fight in terms of IQ and technicality while it lasts. And hopefully, if it does last more than 16 seconds, like the first fight did. So how I see this fight going down round by round, I think that Gary Antonio Russell will start out pretty strong. I think he'll get out to a fast start. I think he could be up after 3 rounds, maybe 30-27, 29-28. I think he'll start out fast with a jab and simply outwork Rodriguez in those first 3 rounds. Rodriguez might be able to edge one of them, being that if it's like a feel-out round or something like that. But then, as the rounds go on, like in the middle rounds, like from rounds 4 to like rounds 8, I think they could be very competitive. I think that Rodriguez could get into a rhythm, could win maybe 3 of those rounds, and really tighten up the fight. But I think that most of the rounds will be fought very similarly and very competitively in those middle rounds. I think that Russell and Rodriguez will be both battling out, trying to land punch for punch. Like, Rodriguez would land a jab, then Russell would try and land 2 jabs back, like something like that. But it's not going to be like a slugfest. It's just going to be both of them trying to score more points on each other, trying to outland each other, just really trying to just be more technical and be more smart in there. So yeah, I think that both of them will be trying to tag each other. I think that out of the 2 in this fight, I think that Russell might be a bit more aggressive, considering both of them have very similar styles when they fight other fighters. I think that Russell, being that he's just sort of rising up, I think he's going to want to show something. So I think he's going to be a bit more aggressive in this fight than usual, coming forward a bit more. But I don't think it's going to be necessarily like a big change. I think he'll have a very similar style to what we're used to, but he'll just be a bit more sort of action-packed when it comes to stepping forward and bringing the fight. But I think Rodriguez, like I said earlier, is just going to try and be a boxer-puncher, trying to just land shots, counter Russell. I think that Russell will be doing the same thing, but fighting also at mid-range as well, occasionally coming forward too. But I think he will be coming forward more than Rodriguez in this case. So yeah, I think those middle rounds will be very, very competitive. Just really overall, the middle rounds, I could see Rodriguez taking 3 of them, and or Rodriguez taking somewhere around that, like 3-4 rounds, from rounds like 4 to rounds 8. So it could be pretty tight. Like, let's say after 8 rounds in total, it could be like 77-75. Gary Antonio Russell, maybe 76-76, like something like that. It could be very, very close and competitive after 8. But then I think in the later rounds, I think they will actually favor Gary Antonio Russell. I think that Emmanuel Rodriguez isn't really necessarily the best when it comes to the later rounds. Even though he hasn't really been hurt or tasted canvas late, I just feel that Gary Antonio Russell is going to be better suited for those later rounds. I think that he'll have much more success. I think he'll get back into that rhythm he was in the first few rounds, and I think he'll win those last rounds pretty clearly. Maybe one of them being edged to Rodriguez, but that's just a maybe. But I think that primarily those rounds will be won pretty clearly by Gary Antonio Russell. I think that Rodriguez will slow down with his work like that he had in the middle rounds, and I think that Russell will pick it up and win those rounds pretty clearly. So I think rounds 9 to rounds 12 will go pretty clearly for Gary Antonio Russell. So yes, I do think this fight will go the distance, and I think that the judges will turn out scorecards all in favor of Gary Antonio Russell. And if you're predicting this fight, comment down below who you think is going to win and by what method of victory. I think that this fight will be primarily like an 8-4 type fight, like 116 to 112. And I think that the judges will turn out scorecards like that. Like 2 judges could have it 116, 112. Maybe one judge either might have it like 115, 113, maybe 117, 111. Like just either dividing one or giving one round to Rodriguez or giving one more round to Russell, like something like that. Like just trading in one round a piece either way. But nonetheless, it's probably going to be somewhere around like a 116, 112 type fight in favor of Gary Antonio Russell, and I think he will get the unanimous decision victory. And yeah, this is a very big fight for Russell because it could lead to him maybe getting a world title shot in the next year or so. So overall, I believe that Gary Antonio Russell will defeat. So overall, I believe that Gary Antonio Russell will defeat former IBF bantamweight world champion Emmanuel Rodriguez, and I think he will defeat him by unanimous decision in like a 116-112 type of fight. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.